Who knew there'd be so many wild rabbits? Set up some traps, and by morning, you've caught a bunch. Every rabbit is accounted for, and I could even use their fur to make a coat. I could turn their fur into a jacket. As for cooking, I'm torn between stew or roast to keep the flavor. The key is to preserve the natural taste. Would you bring spices if you were in the wild? It's day 40 of the challenge. Mark never imagined he would set his shelter on fire. The fire kept growing, and he had to tear down the burning parts. Fortunately, the shelter can still be used. He'll collect branches and moss in the morning to fix it. He must be more careful next time, otherwise it might catch fire again next time. After a busy cleanup, Mark finally gets to sit down and rest. He feels fortunate. Thankfully, it didn't ignite while he was asleep. He found it just in time and saved the shelter. Otherwise, he would have had to leave. Surviving out here means being extra careful with fire. One small error can cause a disaster like his. Mark isn't in the mood to sleep now. He's thankful he can still sit by the fire for warmth. He really misses his son at home. He wonders how his son is doing. After the fire, Mark wants to go home even more. He barely survived the night. Now he must quickly fix the shelter as the wind intensifies. It's not even fully winter yet, and it's already this challenging. It's tough to picture the days ahead. Luckily, the shelter's frame is intact. He only needs to replace the outer layer. To prevent another fire, he decides to relocate the waterproof cloth by the fireplace. While it's a small task, it can be exhausting. He needs to take some time to rest properly. It's the 41st day of the challenge. Joe feels on the verge of collapse. With no room to stretch, he can only twist his neck slightly to relieve his body. He has put so much effort into this shelter. He's really worn himself out. He originally thought he could finish it quickly and stockpile enough food for winter, but reality is harsh. He's been busy all this time, barely scraping by. Any surprise could end his challenge. Joe's thoughts are simple now. He no longer cares about the $1 million prize. His focus is on finishing the shelter. He works a bit, then needs to rest for hours. The shelter won't be done anytime soon, and he still needs to gather food. Joe even considered burning it down and leaving, but he keeps sooner or later, Joe's going to crack. Meanwhile, Amos has gathered plenty of food and, out of boredom, started crafting little trinkets. He hopes to bring them home for his kids. As the weather cools, finding food gets tougher. The fishing rod won't hold up for the whole challenge. He needs to find more food. Since he first arrived, he's lost about 30 pounds. He often feels dizzy and unwell. If he could, he would love to hunt a big game. That way, he could rest and survive until the end. But with only rabbit tracks around, he has to rely on his traps and hope they work. Amos trusts his traps, having made them since childhood. If a rabbit comes by, Amos is looking forward to some tasty rabbit meat, but he's worried about foxes stealing his catch. The tracks are pretty close to his shelter. If they sneak into the shelter, that would be a disaster. So, Amos decides to craft a spear for protection. It could fend off small animals, but a bear swipe would easily break it. Amos is focused on making weapons when he suddenly hears a noise. It could be a fox trying to steal his catch. He hurries outside to investigate. Fortunately, he acts swiftly. The trap has caught a rabbit, and he scares the fox away. Otherwise, the rabbit would have been stolen. He'll clean it up tomorrow. Amos feels confident again. He believes he can finish the 100-day challenge. On day 42, he considers chewing some Yunshan toothpaste. They say it keeps your breath fresh all day and lifts your spirits. Next, he continues to look for something edible nearby. Even though he's caught several rabbits before, he's still losing weight. He needs more food to regain his energy. Suddenly, he notices porcupine tracks. Their fat is essential, but he also sees wolf tracks nearby. That's not good news. The porcupine might already be targeted by the wolves. Despite this, Killian decides to check it out. He can't just let food slip away. The tracks are getting more numerous, and he doesn't know which way to go. The dropping temperatures are making hunting tougher. He's also wondering how the others are faring. Cowley scans the area and notices rabbit tracks. There are quite a few animals around, but none are coming our way. After searching, I still haven't found a porcupine. I have to set more traps here. The camera shifts to Amos. He's in a really good mood. After all, he caught a rabbit last night. Now he can clean and eat it, staying near his shelter to avoid attracting bears. Don't be fooled by the size of the rabbit. There's actually not much meat inside, and even less fat, so just eating this will make you thinner over time. In no time, Amos has cleaned it up. He thinks fish tastes better. This meat is just a snack. He didn't anticipate the fox being drawn to the innards. Amos muses aloud, I wonder how fox meat tastes. Even when Amos tries to scare it off with noise, the fox remains unfazed, still searching for food near the shelter. He quickly grabs his bow and arrow to scare it off. If the fox enters the shelter, he'll have to eat it, even though it pains him. The fox is still swaggering around, making Amos so angry that he shoots an arrow at it. If it had come nearer, he'd be roasting fox meat tonight. He used to fear black bear attacks daily. Now he has to be wary of foxes too. This 100-day challenge isn't for everyone. Amos wishes he could store more food. Let's check on Killian. She hasn't eaten well in ages and deeply misses her husband. It's truly grueling here. She works hungry every day and feels like she could devour a whole cow right now. This is the longest she's been apart from her husband since they married. She worries about him and wishes he could be here with her. Forget 100 days, even a year wouldn't be a problem. It's time to see how things are now. Without enough food, Killian considers heading home early, wondering where the turkeys have gone. Catching one would be such a relief. There are many tracks near the traps, but Killian fears other animals are stealing the food. Spotting a gnawed rabbit, her hopes are dashed. She was already in a bad mood, and now it's even worse. The meat is inedible. The trap next door did catch a rabbit, but it was gnawed on. Killian is furious and wants to burn the place down. We were looking forward to a good meal today, but now I'm too upset to eat. If the other traps are like this, I can't handle it. I think it's time to head home and rest. We've only managed to catch one rabbit so far. I couldn't stop myself from crying again. Killian longs for her husband's comfort, feeling abandoned by this challenge. The loneliness is unbearable. Living like this will make anyone lose their mind. Killian's endurance so far shows her strength, but it's uncertain how much longer she can keep going. The camera moves to Joe, whose body is weakening daily. Each morning, he struggles to get up, yet he still aims to enhance his shelter by laying stones on the ground later. However, I believe he should check the traps first. Without food, building is pointless. Today, Joe's luck was good. He caught a rabbit. Though it was a bit small, he held it close to warm it up a bit, making it easier to handle later. What Joe didn't expect was that another trap also caught a rabbit, and it was still alive. Struggling, Joe couldn't stand seeing the rabbit suffer, so he swiftly ended its pain. He was baffled by today's events. Another rabbit was caught in the neighboring trap. Great, another hassle. Joe isn't thrilled, if not for the tears at the corner of his mouth. I nearly believed him. Joe enjoys a hearty meal and gains confidence in building his shelter. He figured 3 rabbits would suffice, but nature gifted him a 4th. It's been ages since he had this much food. He was in a great mood, hurrying back to clean the rabbits. It's been ages since he saw this much meat. He put them straight into the pot to cook. He thought the meat tasted fantastic and hoped he could eat like this more often. Suddenly, Joe heard a wolf howl. This was not good news. He had just eaten rabbit meat and now wolves were coming. No sleep tonight. He needed to stay vigilant. Joe was preoccupied with figuring out a plan. If it wasn't a whole pack of wolves, he still had a shot at managing it. Tension was mounting. It was now day 43 of the challenge, and Joe woke up feeling off. He didn't feel like building anymore. The 100-day challenge was really tough, and he doubted anyone could finish it. He just wanted to go home and rest. Now he had to push himself to work. He needs to build a perfect shelter. If he doesn't finish before the lake freezes, he'll seriously think about quitting. Rabbit meat has no fat at all. No matter how much you eat, it won't restore your energy. Everything is going downhill. Suddenly, I felt sick. This isn't what I expected. My legs are trembling, and I can hardly stand. Joe feels everything is too difficult. He thinks eating rabbit meat is making him use more energy to digest it. Even so, he insists on finishing the shelter. He can lose the challenge, but the shelter must be completed. Conversely, Mark is more laid back. He lies on the ground, reluctant to move, thinking this life isn't so bad. His shelter isn't fully repaired yet. It actually needs a lot of materials. Every day, he forces himself to work hard. He worries his body will soon give out if this keeps up, especially since his fish supply is nearly depleted. He'll just keep getting hungrier. He's lost a lot of weight since he arrived, and his stomach is probably having problems. Despite eating a lot today, he still feels hungry and never seems to get full. Now, he has to ration his food. He hopes rationing will help him continue. Mark misses his kids more each day and is very concerned about his health. Despite his efforts to stay motivated, Mark's mental state is deteriorating. He's curious about the other participants' progress. Can anyone really complete this challenge? Anyway, he's almost at his limit. He'll take it one day at a time. On the 44th day, the crew arrived early to pick someone up. Who do you think quit? It can't be Roland, as he's been absent. Any of the others might have quit. I believe Joe and Mark are the most likely. Shortly after, the crew arrived. Yes, the one who quit is the man who kept mentioning finishing his shelter. He feels his body can't handle it anymore. He shouldn't have built such a large one from the start. It was completely beyond his capability. Plus, he hasn't had much to eat. His body has been overworked every day. He wants to reunite with his family while he can still move. This challenge is just too hard. He doesn't think anyone can complete it. If possible, he hopes to keep the shelter and come back to finish it after he recovers. Joe is obsessed with it, curious if he'll see the final result. What do you all think of his shelter? Is Joe's shelter up to the challenge? Only 5 of us remain, and Roland's the only one with a steady food supply. The other participants aren't doing so well. The camera shifts to Jillian, who looks in good spirits today. She feels she must keep going, despite wanting to reunite with her husband. The $1 million prize could change their lives. She and her husband could improve their life. So she keeps pushing herself to stay strong. Things aren't great right now. I need to get more food to keep my energy up. Suddenly, I see a rabbit in the trap. This is a good start. At least I have some meat for today. I didn't expect to find another rabbit in the nearby trap. Jillian's luck seems to be improving. Nearby, there's another rabbit in the trap. Grateful for nature's gift, he feels motivated to continue. Jillian had handled so many rabbits that she could skin one quickly. They didn't have much fat on them. He's still worried about his body's endurance and fears overeating could be harmful. Mark, on the other hand, is also struggling. Bored enough to talk to himself on camera, Mark relies on the crew's periodic visits for footage and health checks. Being alone for such a long time can really drive you crazy. Mark thinks the scariest part is, sometimes it feels like someone is beside you, and you catch yourself talking to them before realizing it's just you. I truly admire those who live in isolation. How do they manage to live alone? Mark tried to lift his spirits, but it didn't help much. He just wants to go home to his kids. After much thought, he decided to quit the challenge. The $1 million prize is alluring, but his health takes precedence. As Mark was leaving, he was surprised to see the fox he had released. It felt like the fox came to say goodbye, which moved Mark deeply, showing animals can form connections. He left the remaining meat in the shelter for the fox. He decided to leave it all for the fox. Soon, the crew arrived at Mark's place. It was surprising that 2 people were leaving in one day. The crew is beginning to question if anyone will complete the challenge. Mark believes he has done his best, but his body is struggling. Letting go can be tougher than persevering. Mark now just wants to get home to his son. If he could catch a big animal, he might have completed the challenge if his luck had been better. Sadly, another contestant has quit, and it feels like the $1 million prize might not be given out this time. The camera shifts to Cowley, whose trap has caught another rabbit. He's in high spirits and still hopes to catch that porcupine. Coincidentally, today is a festival, so he decides to cook a celebratory meal, hoping it will bring him luck. He starts by stewing the rabbit. While the natural flavor is decent, he craves something richer but lacks seasonings. After an indefinite wait, he finally cooks the rabbit meat, which smells good. Cowley wonders how many contestants remain. He hopes everyone can finish the challenge. Do you think anyone will make it to the end?